Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my new series, Squeeze of the Day. I'm gonna be making juice recipes by hand, like I've always made them. I don't have a fancy juicer, but I would like one day. But this is how I make my juice, only organic ingredients, and I find that making juice this way is the absolute best way to just squeeze all of the nutrients that you possibly can out of whatever it is that you're eating. And I'm so excited to share this series with you. Lots of people have asked me for juice recipes, so I'm really excited to show you how to make it. So follow along and I hope you enjoy. Today's juice recipe is going to be a really simple one to get us started. Most of the juice recipes I'm gonna make are actually gonna be quite simple. I find the simpler the better. No need to overcomplicate it, it's just juice. Today we're gonna be making a pineapple kale juice. I have a pineapple and some kale. I do organic whenever, wherever possible. This kale was like on its way out at the grocery store, so I salvaged it and I'm gonna be using it for today's juice recipe. Of course, we're making sure that all of our produce is washed. You don't have to wash a pineapple because it has skin on it, but obviously kale needs to be rinsed, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So I think it's also important to note that whenever I make juice or wash my produce or even just drink tap water, I have a pretty hefty filter system here. So this guy filters out any and all particulates, fluoride, chlorine, everything. Especially living in the city, I find the water just tastes better and I don't want any of that stuff getting into my fresh juice. So I will always rinse with filtered water. If you don't have filtered water, fine, just rinse it with tap water, but I definitely recommend having a filter on your water, especially if you live in the city. It's just better. Okay, so now that my produce is washed, we are going to prep it to go in the blender. Nothing special, just a regular old blender. So I'm only going to be using half of this pineapple today because the other half is going to be for another recipe, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. So we're just going to cut this pineapple right in half, and we're going to save this top half for later. Oh yeah, that smells really good. Cutting pineapple can be like a little bit daunting, but I found the easiest way to do it is once you've cut the top off, or here in this case we're cutting it in half, cut off the bottom so you have two flat surfaces to work with, and then you're just going to cut down the peels just like that. If you still have like little bits of the eyes of brown spots, don't worry about it because it's going to come out when you strain out the pulp of the juice. You're not going to end up with any of this in your actual juice, so you don't have to be perfect. Gonna go right into the compost. As with the peel, I'm not too concerned with the core of the pineapple because again, it's gonna come out when you strain the pineapple through cheesecloth, so don't worry too much about it. I just want to get this into small enough chunks that it fits down into my blender. So that's all I'm gonna do is just cut it up into more manageable sized pieces. As long as it gets down like past the blades and you're good. Perfect. Pineapple in. Now whenever I use kale for like a smoothie or I'm cooking with it, generally I'll remove the stalks. Here, it doesn't really matter. I'll generally just cut off like a small amount at the base, just because I don't want the juice to be too bitter, but all of the rest of it just goes right into the blender. This was a really small bunch that I got from the grocery store today, so I'm literally just gonna use all of it. Again, I'm gonna cut it into slightly smaller pieces just to help the blender along. If you have a really good blender, you might not need to do that step, but I just have your regular blender, so I want to help it as much as I can. That is all. Again, last little bits into the compost. Next, we're going to add in our filtered water. So again, I'm using completely filtered water. Generally, I'll fill the water up just enough to get everything blending. I don't want to have too much water. I mostly want to have the juice from what it is that's in my blender. So I will go little by little to help the blender along as much as possible, or as much as needed. But I definitely start with less and work my way up until the blender is doing its thing. Okay, so I filled the blender up like more or less halfway. So we'll start to blend this, and then I'll add water as needed to get a full blend. Seems to be about the perfect amount of water. So generally the rule, again, is just enough water to get the blender to do its thing. So once everything is spinning, give it a minute. Once everything is incorporated, you're gonna actually blend for quite a while, a little longer than you think, probably like 1 to 2 minutes, until you no longer see like too big of pieces left in the blender. You want this to be as smooth as possible because you want to extract as much juice as you possibly can from all of your ingredients. So I'm gonna let this run for a little bit, and then I'll meet you back and we will squeeze it out. All right, so that is about as blended as it's going to get. It's pretty smooth. There are still some little bits in it, but we're working with the blender that we have. So next we're gonna get to straining out our juice. This is the fun part and also the messy part. For this part, I highly recommend just putting an old rag or a kitchen towel down, because no matter how clean you think you're going to be, you're gonna be messier. I just have a couple of vessels, because this is likely going to be more than 1 liter. These are about a liter each. But this is what I'm going to use to collect the juice, and then we'll store it in mason jars when we're done. This is a cheesecloth. It was from a big roll. I think I have it in 4s. So all I'm going to do is start, I'm going to make kind of a little well in there, and then start pouring this in. You will see once the liquid starts to soak through cloth, it will start to drip out, and then at that point you're ready to give a little squeeze. You don't want to squish this down into here because it will just like flow over the outside. You want to hold it up a little bit. You will find that some of this does get quite foamy. When working with pineapple, I find that just generally happens. The really stiff foam you can actually just separate right off the top of your juice once it settles. Yeah, and then you're just gonna squeeze out your juice. One part that I forgot is I like to have a compost bag. This is my compost, yes. You may have noticed that I keep my compost in the freezer. That is a life hack for if you live in a condo or a small space. This is like the life hack that has just stuck with me because it doesn't smell, it keeps everything very compact, and then when this is full, I just take it to the garbage chute. I would like to have a composting system. It's something that I want to work towards getting, so that I can use actually the compost from all of these things for fertilizing my plants. So that is a goal that I have. Let me know in the comments below what you use your compost for, or if you have any methods of composting in a condo or a small space like this. So when you're done your squeeze, this should be quite dry. This is your pulp, so it shouldn't be sopping wet anymore. You should be able to squeeze most of it out through the cheesecloth. Make sure when you're putting this back over that you have the same side up, so you're not rinsing pulp down into your juice. We're just gonna repeat the process until we're done. When you're working with cheesecloth, you do want to squeeze gently, especially when working with citrus fruits, because you can actually squish the citrus through the cheesecloth and then you have chunks in your juice. So you do want to work fairly slowly and move from top down. Don't just squish the pulp, because it will just end up shooting out and ripping your cheesecloth. So just be gentle with it. It does take some time, but honestly, it's a labor of love, and I find that the best juice is hand squeezed in my kitchen. So as you can see, I've got just about a liter here. So I'm going to transfer this into my mason jar. And if you pour it slowly, you should be able to keep the foam into this vessel. So if you just kind of go slow, you will eliminate some of that foam. You might not get all of it, but it will take some of it out. If you're not into having foam on top of your drink, it really doesn't matter. Just like that. Give that guy a quick rinse and we'll keep going. We're just about at the end here. So you'll notice that the last bits in your blender are quite foamy. So you can squeeze actually quite a bit of juice out of this last bit. So don't get hasty and think that you can just like toss this last bit. There's a whole chunk of unblended kale. So that can sometimes happen. If you just have a regular blender, no sweat. Sometimes it happens. And then I'll literally get as much as I can out of the blades, out of the blender itself. Not only because I don't want to waste any juice, but also because it's going to help the cleaning process a lot by not getting all of this pulp into my sink. So there's our last little bit. Again, I'm going to pour it in here slowly to reduce some of the foam that gets in there. You can even just use your finger a little bit. Now, as for your cheesecloth, I reuse my cheesecloth. I really don't mind. I'll just rinse it out with hot water and then you can literally just throw it right in the wash. It doesn't last forever. This will fray, it will get old. I recommend getting a roll of cheesecloth or if you're close to a store, just getting a new one, you know, every few juices. So I'm just gonna rinse all of the pulp off of it and then this will be good to use again for another juice. So waste not, want not. Pulp will go into the freezer. And there we have it. So half a pineapple and one small bunch of kale gave us about 1 liter of juice done by hand. A very simple at-home way that you can make a really nice, really tasty, healthy juice. Anything with pineapple tastes absolutely amazing. Let's give her the taste test. It's delicious. It's funny because it smells like kale. It doesn't smell very appetizing, but it tastes like pineapple. So it's nice and sweet. Any of these juices that I'm gonna make are gonna be excellent for a post-workout. After you've sweat a lot, there's gonna be lots of micronutrients. Definitely make sure you're subscribed to see all the different juice recipes that are coming your way. This juice will last in the fridge for 3-ish days. I wouldn't push it any longer than that. I will seal this with a proper mason jar lid. To make it last up to the 5 days, you can add a little bit of lemon juice to it as a bit of a natural preservative. It will obviously affect the taste a little bit, but if you want to keep it for a little bit longer, or you make a larger batch and it's just for yourself and you need it to preserve longer, you can use a little bit of lemon juice. But my recommendation is I'm going to drink probably half of this now and the other half tomorrow. So I generally make about 1 liter at a time for myself every other day because the fresher the better. So there you have it for today's squeeze of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed for the next juice recipe and I will see you soon. God damn, that is good. So good.